Welcome, low ego action heroes, to episode 115, Breaking the Addiction to Aspirology Workshops. This is the first half of a longer presentation that I wrote. Next week, I'll do the second half. So together, they will be the watch party for all of the CX and UX people at your company. So that being said, I'm going to jump right in with my slides and let everybody know that I probably have about an hour and a half of content each broadcast, and I will try to take questions as they come up in the chat room, but I'll probably ignore anything that's just a comment or an agreement so I can just get through the slides because there are many of them. Okay, so let's check that all the systems are working today. You should be seeing me and the slides and of course the tip jar, which is completely optional. All right, so let me start out. Y'all know me. I'm not even going to bother introducing myself. You're on my channel. You know about me. You can learn more at deltacx.com. And you can run into me in all kinds of places. The little camera icon on the bottom of the screen, which way do I need to point? That just means that my slides are done animating. So people who like to take screenshots or anything else, they should just look for the little camera icon, and then my slide is done animating. Let's see, what else can I tell you? Let's just jump in. So we're in trouble. And when I say we or us, I mean CX and UX. I know some people who might be joining live or watching this later might not be from the UX team. So hello, I'm happy you're here. Just a note that whenever I say we or us and you, I probably mean CX and UX practitioners and leaders. So not leaving you out, but this is kind of about us. Many of our non-UX coworkers, leaders, and higher tend to define UX as wireframing and prototyping some screens. For us, that's one task of one phase of user-centered design. Years, if not decades, of evangelism haven't fixed this misunderstanding. Many of our coworkers still have no sense that we're problem finders, problem solvers, and customer advocates. They think we are production designers. This is why, to me, a broader term like CX might help people better understand the whole of what we do. So I've been shifting my language towards CX. You'll hear me say CX and UX for what you tend to think of as UX. Can anyone say hi in the chat room? I just want to make sure I'm live and this is working, so I'll keep going. So the great UX misunderstanding leads to companies and teams who think that everybody's a designer, which means that anybody can do UX work. Product managers can wireframe, business analysts can interview customers, engineers can do what they like, and evidently specialists aren't needed. Next, let's make sure that UX doesn't make any decisions without everybody's so-called alignment. UX is told to democratize or decentralize, remove our power and autonomy so others can make decisions in our domain. Funny how we're never invited to make decisions in their domain. Well, since everybody wants to do UX work and make decisions about the product and its design, UX should run more workshops so we can all do UX work together. In fact, when you want to facilitate your teammates stabbing at your specialized tasks, you can use some nicely packaged frameworks like design thinking, design sprints, lean UX, and more. Meanwhile, we also have fake agile, which wants to release something fast and figure out months from now that it wasn't quite right. We pretend that we'll fix it later, but that rarely happens. Agile says you need UX and design on your teams, but not UX specialists. So just have some engineers read a UX book or take an online course. Then they can do the UX. Fake lean. Traditional lean and Six Sigma remind us that lean is about identifying and cutting anything that is wasteful to our company, process, or customer. But thanks to the Lean Startup book, everybody thinks lean means doing the absolute least we can to move to the next step. And why are we emulating startups who fail like 90% of the time? Fake lean should be cut for being wasteful and based on guesses. Part 2 next week will be agile and lean, by the way. And because of all of this, we have ridiculous jobs that ask for the moon, don't assess if we can deliver any piece of the moon, and just check if we're visual designers. They want us to just take orders, guess at wireframes, and design something fast so engineers can build it. I am having some trouble seeing the chat room. I don't know if anybody is. I am live. Okay, but I'm not getting the chat. So if anyone's asking questions, I'm not seeing it. If anyone asks questions, can you send them to me? Or try typing something in the chat because I'm not seeing the chat. Apologies, everybody. So to finish this slide up, during our time together, both this week's and next week in part 2, I hope to chip away at most of these and tell you how you can at least try to also. Our solution has traditionally been to evangelize CX and what we do to everybody at our company. I see job descriptions that require CX evangelism. That tells me people at this company don't understand or respect CX. Good luck working here. No other role at your company spends time and effort evangelizing themselves the way that we do. Developers aren't making PowerPoints to explain why it's important to hire qualified developers and let them write code. QA isn't holding meetings to teach everyone the importance of testing software. It's just us, and it's making us look weird and whiny. It's not working. There are many things people don't want to be sold. A new religion, going vegan, and the value of CX and UX. Unfortunately, there are some false gods out there claiming to be CX or UX models, but they aren't. I'm sorry, I'm going to open up chat on my phone since it's not working. Okay. Hi, I am live. Hi, everybody. Thanks. I'm going to have to watch it on my phone then. So as I was saying, there are some false gods out there that are the newest forms of evangelism, but they're making processes and outcomes at our companies worse. Aspirologies is my made-up term for approaches that don't deserve to be called methodologies. That's giving them too much credibility. I've got hours about all of these on my YouTube channel, but this is the shorter version. The main aspirologies you will run into are design sprints, design thinking, and so-called lean UX, which is neither lean nor UX. Aspirologies have some common characteristics you can easily recognize. Codependency. CX seems to need everybody to do their job for and with them. Disrespect of teammates' time. Aspirology workshops or exercises require teammates to stop what they're doing for hours or days. Reliance on assumptions. Aspirologies prioritize speed over quality. They increase business and project risk by running with guesses, thinking that'll save time. They often start their processes with whatever a stakeholder says is our problem, challenge, or what we're building. Don Norman would say you have to reject that and find the real root causes. Giving specialized work to non-specialists. Aspirologies love workshops where CX work is done by those without CX knowledge, expertise, experience, skill, or talent. Yet where else would we do that? We don't hold workshops where everybody, including me, co-decides the back-end database architecture. Democratizing or decentralizing CX is completely fake. Many non-CX roles demand to have authority and decision-making power over the user experience, yet those roles never give up power or decisions in their own domain. We don't have the cross-functional team all making engineering decisions. Magically, the cries for democracy are only for CX. They apply to no other domain, which is how we know this is fake. And speaking of fake customer centricity. We pretend that we really care about customers and their satisfaction, but we guess who they are and what they need. We don't observe or research the people we're building for. We pretend we have empathy or sympathy. Put that on. But if we really cared about users' experiences, we wouldn't rush out garbage that doesn't solve customers' problems and improve their task accomplishment. Innovation and solution theater. How many never-before-seen world premiere ideas came out of these workshops? How many solutions were wrong, non-viable, or were based on guesses versus being based on proper research? Vote for the winner. Somehow we don't all need to get together, brainstorm various product roadmaps, and then vote on our favorite product roadmap. And we shouldn't pick products, features, or concepts like it's American Idol. Emotional outcomes. Everybody enjoyed the workshop, but where are the real budget and ROI figures? What were our success criteria? Did our workshop even have success criteria? Enough buzzwords thrown in so that it sounds like CX even if it's not. You'll hear about customer journey maps, personas, problem solving, prototypes, and testing, but it's all just theater. Now, some of you have seen a couple of these slides before, but I have a whole bunch of new slides coming after this. So stick around if you feel like you've seen this before. There's a lot coming that you haven't. You've been sold a promise that if you brought design sprints or design thinking into your company, you will really help people understand the value of design. You'll be more respected. You will get the time, budget, and headcount that you need to do your job well. Some of you have been trying that for months or years. How's it going? Not the version you tell leadership where you tell them people really enjoy the workshops. I mean, how's it really going? The success criteria and ROI for all of those design sprints and design thinking exercises. You didn't have success criteria or measure ROI? Well, one easy success criterion would be, did you get that seat at the table? Is CX or UX now thoroughly respected? Nobody else is trying to do your work, overrule or circumvent you, or drag you into endless alignment meetings where non-UX teammates want to make UX decisions. If you ask for time or budget to do a 4 or 6 week research project, do you now get that time? And design and engineering wait for your results thanks to socializing design thinking? Is the UX department growing and hiring more highly qualified practitioners? Or does someone just say, research is slow and bloated and we have empathy for users. Just do some exercises and workshops. Here's design thinking in Portuguese, including a mini Olympics of possible technologies, user needs, and business objectives. When you interview for jobs and they ask your approach to CX design, research, or whatever your core specialty is, do you tell them you do design thinking and first you create empathy? If I looked at your portfolio of work, is that the process I would see? Why are we socializing, spreading, and training something we don't even do? When you're brought onto a new project at work, do you say to yourself, yep, time to switch to my design thinking mindset? Of course not. You have CX and UX running through your blood and there is no off switch. I've never been asked to stop doing my user-centered design or human-centered design work and instead just do design thinking. Design thinking is a downgrade. And if you're not sure, we've got Don Norman telling you all about that. Don Norman recently shot a video and I put a clip of it on the YouTube channel. He said design thinking is not working because companies aren't design driven. What he calls design driven, I call customer centricity because many of our coworkers think design is just about making things pretty. Do any two people have the same definition of design thinking? We know design thinking is a meaningless term because of what it takes to get a certificate in it. You just have to know there are 5 steps and lots of fun group craft exercises. Nobody judged, tested, or assessed your ability to empathize, how completely you understood the problem and the customers, if your ideas were viable or good, if you prototyped well. Nobody judged, checked, or assessed your testing plan, discussion guide, participants' execution, or interpretation of the testing. Everyone gets a design thinking trophy and is often sure they can do our work. Many of you will be familiar with the standard version 1 of design sprints. Define the problem, ideate, decide, prototype, and test. Facilitators started finding problems with design sprints, so they started creating new versions that coexist. They don't replace the original version. Version 2 of design sprints do not allow workshop attendees to prototype or test. The design sprint is 2 days long, and it's over after picking the winner. Prototyping and testing were deemed too important to be stabbed at by the team, so it's left to experts who will report back later on how it went. Design Sprints version 3 removed everything relating to defining the problem so that people aren't stabbing, guessing, or going with what they think customers do. Facilitators were finding that the problem the stakeholder presented was often garbage and couldn't be validated. Version 3 requires experts to do weeks of qualitative research before the design sprint. Observational studies, interviews, personas, customer journey maps, and other artifacts. These are not done as team exercises. Everything is then shown to the design sprint attendees so they can understand the problem. If we remove what design sprints know shouldn't be done as a group exercise, the only thing we have left is everybody sketch solutions and vote on your favorite. Design sprints are devolving. Who's making these changes? The agencies making insane money running design sprints. Like any good capitalists, they want to make money and look good by creating better outcomes for their paying clients. Evidently, better outcomes happen when you take tasks away from the design sprint team. I'm against all versions of design sprints because our work is about depth and quality. If you've been wondering how to get your workplace out of the workshop and aspirology habit, and quitting cold turkey doesn't seem like an option, start by switching to versions 2 and 3 of design sprints. Start showing them that there are newer versions that take less time and remove some of the risky guessing everybody in the room was doing. You can then eventually get them away from sketching screens and voting for their favorite by using my Delta CX Ideation workshop, which collects ideas but doesn't sketch screens. I'll be telling you about that later today. So I do long workshops at engineering conferences and in private training, and in one exercise, I show attendees a persona and a customer journey map template. I tell them the persona needs to buy some insurance. What would you guess is the persona's first step in their journey? I then give them around 10 minutes to make a customer journey map. The point of the exercise is not to teach them to do our jobs or to tell them workshops are great for guessing at customer journey maps. Instead, after the exercises, I explain the high risks companies face when creating documentation based on guesses and assumptions without doing real research or involving customers. The last time I did this workshop, before I could get to that point about not working from guesses, an attendee who was an engineer said, "Serious business decisions will be made from this, and we're guessing at it. If this is what UX does, it makes me lose faith in UX." Lose faith in UX, not in workshops, not in me, not in customer journey maps or personas. Lose faith in UX. Team workshops teach people we do work by guessing. They may not say anything to you, but others notice everything on my earlier Aspirologies list. Work by committee and team exercises and workshops are sold as a great way to do team building. Put on your critical thinking hats as I ask you these 2 questions. 1. If team building is best done by group exercises and workshops, where are all of the group exercises and workshops being run by marketing, product management, project management, scrum masters, developers, and QA testers? They all have work we could sketch and brainstorm. Yet how many of those workshops or exercises are done at your company? Probably 0. That means that the excuse of team building is a lie, since if this is how we build teams, we would do it in all areas and domains at our company, not just CX and UX. 2. I researched how to build teams online, and I found mountains of articles, including those published by the New York Times, Forbes, Harvard Business Review, and Entrepreneur.com. 0 of these articles said to hold exercises and workshops where everybody does one role's job. The articles actually suggested the opposite. Most of the team building advice included get to know each other, understand what each role does, value and respect those roles, lay groundwork for work styles and deadlines, improve communication, set measurable team goals, celebrate successes with awards and recognition, and talk about failures and where things could improve. I'd also add that we need project and team charters so we all understand our roles and boundaries. Whether it's research by committee, design by committee, or some other work by committee, the distinction between these and collaboration centers around 2 key questions. 1, who is doing the tasks you were hired to do? If the answer is, only I am doing my job, then it's probably collaboration. If the answer is, non-CX and non-UX roles are doing CX or UX work or tasks that are my job, then it's probably work by committee. This includes Aspirologies and workshops. And second, Who has decision-making power over your CX or UX domain? If others on the cross-functional team have mostly or completely equal say in the product design, CX or UX work, it's work by committee. If you had the whole cross-functional team vote on ideas during group sketching exercises, and that's the decision everybody's running with, that was a CX decision by committee. I recommend against that. It's great to show our work as we go to our cross-functional teammates, not for their approval, but for collaboration and feedback. Hey, product manager, here's my work so far. Does it match requirements? Did I miss a user story? That's collaboration because you're doing your CX or UX job, and the product manager is doing their job in looking at your work through the product manager lens. When you show engineering your wireframes and prototypes, you're checking that the concept is something they can build given time and resources. Part of the collaboration is for you to get feedback on anything that could become an engineering issue so that you can architect and design around potential problems before they happen. You're doing your job, engineering is doing their job. It's important to spend a little extra time explaining Lean UX because although the book was widely hated by UX practitioners, thank you, Charlene. Sorry, people watching in the future at their company watch parties, but we take donations here on the channel, so thanks to Low Ego Action Hero, Charlene. Lean UX has snuck back into our worlds from two sources. I'll explain those sources shortly, but remember, the book was widely hated by most UX practitioners, so we need to talk about why is Lean UX neither Lean nor UX. So here's a few slides from the episode we did almost a year and a half ago. Lean UX is another Aspirology turning UX practitioners into workshop facilitators. For reference, I'm using the 2016 second edition of the book. Here's a summary of its core problems. The authors claim they don't want work by committee, but their definition of collaboration says that all work is a team effort done by committee everywhere and always. In multiple places in the book, the authors clearly state that their definition of collaboration is that everything is done as a team. The authors demand that you not give any work to any individual, even if they're highly specialized. UX workers are reduced to team exercise facilitators. There is not a single task that the authors suggest a UX worker can do themselves without turning it into a team meeting or exercise. They even demand that specialized UX research and its interpretation is given to the team. For something claiming to be lean, it's high on waste. If you thought you were in too many meetings before Lean UX, look out. Since every UX task is done by committee, product managers, engineers, stakeholders, and others will be involved in what seems like multiple daily meetings and team exercises. Everybody is equally involved in research, design, testing, and other important UX tasks, and these all occur in meetings of 2 or more people. In addition to wasted time, there's wasted documentation, which is surprising for a model claiming to reduce documentation. Meetings require people to read their ideas out loud so someone can write them on a sticky note wall. Lean UX is a high-waste, slow-motion process. Over-reliance on what stakeholders want. Quote, "We found it helpful to begin with a problem statement. These statements are created by key stakeholders as they begin to address the strategic vision for the business." End quote. Kindle Location 645. Interestingly, we learned from Design Sprints version 3 that starting with stakeholders describing the problem or what challenge we're here to address was the wrong way to start. If we want to be customer-centric, then we must define problems from the perspectives we've collected from customers, not from a stakeholder looking at business goals. These might not be aligned or close to real customers' needs, habits, and likely actions. A stakeholder's vision is always considered, but should not be the main source material. Too much time spent on assumptions rather than collecting or using great data. Many of the exercises in the book start and or end with collecting all of the assumptions everybody on the team has about the customer, the product, how testing went, or something else. Rather than documenting those assumptions as risks and doing research to replace guesses with knowledge, Lean UX tells you to move forward with your guesses and assumptions. This doesn't sound lean and runs completely against Six Sigma's desire to prioritize verifiable data over assumptions and guesswork. I can't find any reason to work from the assumptions and guesses of teammates who might not understand customers' needs and tasks. Teammates who might be high on bias or ego or have a horse in the product race. We've got to start with proper research. The Lean UX book recommends nearly zero documentation because we were all in that meeting, not a direct quote. Since everything is done by committee and we were all in that meeting, the Lean UX book tries to be lean by claiming you can have almost no documentation. However, some documentation is important. What happens when people are fired or quit or go on extended leave? Now there's nobody left to remember what happened in that meeting. What if someone has a poor memory? What if we all remember that meeting differently? It seems rather unprofessional to rely on human memories of an event so that we can avoid documenting it. The Lean UX also has a lot of areas where you work from what the stakeholder says, you work from assumptions, guesses, and beliefs the team has, you skimp on research, you have everybody on the team designing by committee, and the whole team makes decisions in the CX and UX domain. The book assumes all of this goes well. Happy path all the way. There seems to be no plan B or what to do if the stakeholder's problem statement is garbage, or what to do if people on your team are doing research badly or sketching awful screens. Evidently, Lean UX always just goes perfectly, and you don't need to worry about a plan B. Remember, in the next episode, 116, I'll be talking about Agile and Lean, so we'll kind of complete the circle here. As an example of many of the core problems in the Lean UX book is their business assumptions exercise, Kindle Location 696. Consider how much time and money this exercise is burning while focusing on elements that run against great CX practices. Kayleen says, did not know that decreasing documentation was part of Lean UX. It's part of Lean UX, but not necessarily part of Lean. So heads up. Each attendee answers all of the following questions on the worksheet template. Now, I'm for people who are in listen-only mode, I am showing the Lean UX business assumptions exercise. You can Google for that. You don't need the Lean UX book. I just found it out in the Googleverse, the Google Images. So the questions on the worksheet template include, I believe my customers have a need too. These needs can be solved with, and what product features are important to the user? These are assumptions collected from everybody on the cross-functional team. These are not answered by solid research and data. Everybody's writing down their guesses and beliefs about customers and solutions. Would you like to spend your company's time and money on beliefs you have about what customers need? Isn't that what's going wrong now? Or would you like to research and know what your customers need, thereby reducing a variety of business risks? We're going to now guess at what features the product should have and how it will look or work. Sure seems a bit early in the process, but Lean UX seems to believe that everything that adds value to user-centered design is a waste of time and money. And we're only going to look at one risk? How about the very meta question asking what assumptions we have that might cause the project to fail? A business assumptions exercise that includes guessing at product features, look, and interactivity wants to pretend to also be identifying and mitigating risk. This whole exercise creates risk. These are the assumptions that could cause our project or business to fail. But the business assumptions exercise is not a risk mitigation exercise or a warning about crappy assumptions. It's a jumping off point for creating proto-personas and features. The book says that after everybody fills that template out, go around the table and share everyone's answers, question by question. Rather than having someone synthesize the answers and send out a report, Lean UX burns meeting time for us to read out loud to each other. This sounds like a completely undesirable meeting. Collect these answers on sticky notes or a whiteboard. Sort them into themes. As a team, prioritize which themes are the most important for each question. The goal is to collect the statements we think are true. Oof. So we had answers written down, but we read them out loud so someone could rewrite them on sticky notes or the whiteboard. How is this lean again? And it's more American Idol voting, where the cross-functional team guesses which guesses are most important. Just collect the statements everybody thinks are true and base your entire product on those. What could go wrong? After this exercise, you will move on to writing hypotheses based on the assumptions you collected from everyone. Given how the word hypotheses is often followed by words like testing or validation, you would think that your next step is to find ways to test your hypotheses, but not in Lean UX. After hypotheses, you will be creating proto-personas, also based on assumptions about customers. Quote, "It was often the case that we created personas as the output of lengthy, expensive research studies." End quote. Kindle Location 830. How long is lengthy and how expensive is expensive? The book doesn't say, but it's designed to sound unacceptable to us. Instead, the authors suggest that you start with assumptions and then do a few hours of customer interviews down the road to validate or invalidate your proto-personas. The odds of the tail wagging the dog here seem high, and these interviews could be skewed towards validating assumptions. Please don't fall for the false setup that all UX research or any personas project is going to take too long and cost too much. The Lean UX book continues with stringing your collected hypotheses together to create a backlog of potential work. It sounds like you're already defining features based on guesses we're now calling hypotheses. How is it more efficient to start imagining work product based on untested hypotheses versus building the backlog from tested and vetted designs? The book doesn't say. We now have called multiple meetings to learn what non-customers assume about customers. 0 customers have been involved so far. We started with our stakeholder telling us about the problem, and we went right into guessing and assuming about customers, features, and how things look and work. If we find out weeks or months and many dollars later that the early assumptions were even a little wrong, how is this lean? How is this agile? There's a question in the chat room, what's a proto-persona? Totally Googleable, but typically they are a persona that people are guessing and assuming at, and we call it proto-persona to make sure people understand that it didn't come from real research data, it came from guesses and assumptions. The next step in the Lean UX book is collaborative design. Quote, "It's created by a team, not an individual user interface designer." End quote. Kindle Location 1004. The authors claim that this helps teams work together to decide which functionality and interface elements best implement the feature they want to create. Kindle Location 1032. Which is sadly a perfect description of design by committee. It sounds like you can't be trusted to do some interaction design yourself. Everybody stop what I'm doing. I have to work on wireframes and I can't do it myself. Quote, "Teams can design together. In practice, this usually means that teams are sketching together, either on paper or at a whiteboard." End quote. Kindle Location 1174. The Lean UX book suggests using the MVP model and spending as little time as possible prototyping. But more realistic prototyping is better for designing, socializing, collaborating, testing, and delivering to engineering and others. Testing a rushed or non-realistic prototype can be flawed testing and junk science. Quote, "Lean UX research is collaborative. This means you don't rely on the work of specialized researchers to deliver learning to your team. Instead, research activities and responsibilities are distributed and shared across the entire team." End quote. Kindle Location 1781. Remember, when they talk about the entire team, they don't mean the UX team. They mean the agile team and the product manager and all that. And quote, It's essential that you and your team conduct research together. That's why we call it collaborative discovery. Outsourcing research dramatically reduces its value. It wastes time, it limits team building, and it filters the information through deliverables, handoffs, and interpretation. End quote. Kindle location 1789. They just said that specialists who work for our company doing research is outsourcing, a word commonly associated with things we don't want. This is another example of negative framing and how often the Lean UX book manipulates you to accept their declarations even when they have no evidence or even solid reasoning. Negative framing is going to pop up a lot in this presentation this week and next week, so let's get to know it. The framing effect is a cognitive bias that explains how people are more likely to perceive risk based on whether we frame something in a positive or negative light. An example of positive framing is advertising that claims 4 out of 5 dentists would recommend this product. We think, wow, this must be great and low risk. Nobody says 20% of dentists recommend against this product. That would be focused on the risks and drawbacks and could be seen as negative framing. It draws your attention to the negative possibilities. Then from our bucket of logical fallacies, we have argument from ignorance, absence of evidence, and false positive. The Lean UX book declares that having specialists do research dramatically reduces its value. It wastes time, it limits team building, and it filters the information through deliverables, handoffs, and interpretation. However, the book offers no proof or even anecdotes that any of those are true. It's a one-sided argument where only the supposed benefits are mentioned. Are there truly no disadvantages to having the entire cross-functional team plan, execute, and interpret research? Oh, I bet there are many disadvantages there, and I just debunked the whole team building thing. Bonus on this one. Handoff is a negatively framed word in a lot of Agile. Agile uses handoff to imply that UX will be in a silo, will design something without collaborating, and throw it at engineers without a word, and then not respond to questions or discussions. But that's rare. Most of us want to talk more to engineers. We want to collaborate with them while they're building our architecture and designs. A handoff could include collaboration before, during, and after delivering our work to engineering. But instead, we hear that handoffs are evil and we shouldn't do them. We hear that real collaboration means letting others design with us, not handing off designs later. You're being manipulated. And exactly how does having specialists do specialized research waste time? Why use negative framing so that it sounds like research experts interpreting research is something bad we don't want? Manipulation. This one simple sentence from Lean UX is manipulation soup, and manipulation that has fooled too many people into thinking that we need to turn UX work into team events. The Lean UX book plays into the idea that your brain will associate these negatively framed terms with something you don't want. The authors assume you won't think critically, you won't ask questions, and you will just accept these statements and their conclusions. You'll just accept that having specialized researchers do specialized research work is evil outsourcing that wastes time and hurts our teams. You will accept that specialized researchers interpreting their research is an evil filtering of information you don't want. 2 slides ago, you heard Lean UX say that research was lengthy and expensive. Same biases and logical fallacies. They want you to believe that research is always expensive, always lengthy, and definitely never worth it. They want you to believe that it's more important to follow their skimp on everything model so that you can make things shorter and cheaper. You roll the dice when your model is about cutting corners and sacrificing quality to prioritize speed. But you do you, Lean UX. This is part of why critical thinking is completely necessary and mandatory for our work. With critical thinking hats on, you wouldn't be fooled or manipulated by any slippery claims. The authors pretend to walk back their declaration that we shouldn't give work to specialists without actually walking it back at Kindle Location 1800. Researchers sometimes feel, this is a quote, researchers sometimes feel uneasy about this approach. As trained professionals, they're right to point out that they have special knowledge that is important to the research process. We agree. That's why you should include a researcher on your team if you can. Just don't outsource the work to that person. End quote. Again, notice that they are saying outsource for someone who works at your company and is on your team. They're on your team. There's no way that's outsourcing. Quote, instead, use the researcher as an expert guide to help your team plan their work and lead the team through their research activities. In the same way that Lean UX encourages designers to take a more facilitative approach, Lean UX asks the same of the researchers. End quote. Congratulations! You studied, practiced, and applied CX and UX knowledge over months, if not years. You worked to improve your skills and be a problem finder and problem solver. You can't wait to create change and better experiences for the customer. But in Lean UX, designers and researchers are coaches and facilitators watching others do your work. Don't forget the Lean UX book's approach to usability testing. Quote, like almost every other aspect of Lean UX, usability testing should be a group activity. End quote. Kindle Location 1873. Well, at least they can admit that nearly all of their model is group activities. Sounds like your only alone time will be on the toilet. Quote, whether your team does field work or lab work, research generates a lot of raw data. Making sense of this can be time-consuming and frustrating, so the process is often handed off to specialists who are asked to synthesize research findings. You shouldn't do this. Instead, work as hard as you can to make sense of the data as a team. End quote. Kindle Location 1921. So making sense of research data is time-consuming and frustrating for non-specialists, and that's why we normally give that work to specialists, but you shouldn't do that. You should take teammates away from their normal work to give them something they will find time-consuming and frustrating, and this is a good idea? Cost-benefit analysis, anybody? Surely if we want quality over speed, then we want experts doing all research-related tasks versus everybody working hard to make sense of data, no matter how good or bad they tend to be with research or data. Will we be able to admit that non-CX teammates might be bad at research? Does the Lean UX book imagine this outcome and have a solution for it? Quote, when the team has reassembled, I thought we were glued to each other in the same room all the time. Ask everyone to read their findings to one another, another reading out loud meeting. One really efficient way to do this is to transcribe the notes people read out loud onto index cards or sticky notes and then sort the notes into themes. End quote. Kindle Location 1921. I guess this is how they imagine we turn testing interpretation into a team sport. If people are reading out loud, this means they already have their ideas written down. The step of them reading out loud so someone else can write them down again is extremely wasteful and not lean. More undesirable meetings. What if 8 people read their assumptions or research findings out loud and there's no matches? What if everybody interpreted what they saw differently? Which assumptions or beliefs do we include and which do we exclude? Which team member's opinion carries the most weight and wins? Does the Lean UX book have a solution for people disagreeing on how research is planned, done, or interpreted? If UX specialists are just facilitators and coaches, who has final decision-making power when there are different opinions in our domain of expertise? Sorry, delicious dinner shake. Moving on. Whether you're considering endless Lean UX group exercises or team workshops from design thinking or design sprints, consider first if you really need to take teammates away from their work to help you with yours, or if you can do your work yourself and collaborate with them later in other ways. Lean UX makes it sound like as soon as you do something yourself, you have limited or hurt team building. But is that true? Let's put our critical thinking hats on and look at some of the definitions of codependency in the workplace. 1. An individual may be over-involved with their peers to help them get their work done. Yeah, that's a match. If we follow the Lean UX model, we constantly need our peers' over-involvement to get our work done. 2. Feeling responsible for solving others' problems to prevent them from falling under the bus. Teammates might feel like they have to attend all of our meetings and help us out of fear of what our work product is like without their involvement. 3. Expecting others to do what the codependent suggests, otherwise becoming irritated and resentful. We facilitate and run every meeting. We have worksheets, programs, frameworks, canvases, and steps. Are teammates concerned that we could end up resentful or irritated if they try to break out of the prescribed exercises? Do they feel like they can say no to all of our meetings and workshops? 4. Using extreme energy to solve others' problems without even receiving approval or recognition. How do we reward teammates for all of their hours doing our jobs with us? Do they get any approval or recognition? Aspirologies seem to see teammates' involvement in our work as just a part of everybody's jobs. Works harder on others' tasks and problems, leaving little time for their own needs. I have concerns about how little time coworkers will have left to do their own work if they're often researching, interpreting research, sketching, iterating, testing, and interpreting testing with you, not to mention all of the other meetings where you just talk about guesses and hypotheses. When will product engineering and others have time for their own needs? In addition to all of the clear disadvantages to doing everything by committee, you can now add to the list the Lean UX book and other design by committee approaches create unhealthy workplace codependency. We run the risk of coming off as insecure and narcissistic at our workplaces, and they already misunderstand and mischaracterize us and our industry. You might be wondering how a book like Lean UX could possibly be thought of as a good model and something we should do. I said earlier that Lean UX rides a small wave of popularity from two sources. One is UX newbies, often people who are teaching themselves UX or going through a boot camp. They want to read books that say UX. They typically love the model the book presents because, with a focus on someone with a UX title doing nearly zero UX work themselves, it's really a perfect model for a newbie. The newbie isn't yet a specialist. Lean UX has disdain for specialists, so nothing stops the newbie from doing any UX work they want to try. Also, given the details of the Lean UX model, the newbie wouldn't have to show knowledge, skill, or proficiency in UX. If you are new to UX, you're feeling a lack of confidence, and you are afraid someone might notice that you might not be great at your job, Lean UX sounds like a great way to hide. Everything is done by the team, so nobody will really know what you can or can't do, what you're good at, or where you're guessing, where you're faking it without making it. The other source bringing Lean UX into your world is engineering, agile coaches, and scrum masters. As you can probably tell from the few slides I've presented, or if you've read the Lean UX book, Lean UX is incredibly disempowering for UX. Lean UX loves guessing and assuming to save time, which Agile seems to love. Lean UX sees some of our important tasks as a waste of time. Lean UX sees every aspect of UX work as something that everybody on the team can do. No knowledge, talent, or skill required. No accountability for the quality of the work being done. Just do it as a team, try your best, and call it team building. This plays right into the dreams of engineers and agilists who want to control and dominate UX. If you work outside of CX or UX and you wish you had a model that minimized and disempowered UX, you have that in Lean UX. It's even written by a guy claiming to be a UX guy. I'm often reminded of a meeting I went to while I was working at Macy's. The engineering team was showing something they had just built. We in UX had never seen those features or designs before. Where did they come from? The engineering team proudly said they designed it themselves. We were shocked. We had 2 UX workers allocated full-time to this project, and nobody told us about this or wanted to collaborate and show us their attempts at design. Before I could get the next words out of my mouth, the engineering lead in the room howled, "UX is lean waste, and I welcome my engineers cutting lean waste." Cutting lean waste. There had to be 20 people in that room, and they all just looked around at each other in shocked silence. I messaged him later asking why would he think that. His response was that I should read the Lean UX book. I'm not saying the Lean UX book says UX is lean waste that we should cut, but I am saying how I can see how someone would read Lean UX and come to that conclusion. If the book's model is that we don't need specialists and anybody on the team can do UX, then why would any engineer or cross-functional teammate imagine they need us? The book clearly paints our tasks as expensive, slow work that can be reduced or eliminated and replaced by assumptions and designed by committee. With critical thinking, you can see how aspirologies like Lean UX can completely undo our jobs. This is why so many of you panic when your company wants to be more agile, especially flavors of agile that claimed to adopt the Lean UX model. You know they have created their own universe that allows them to exclude us and imagine they can do our work. But more on that later when we talk about agile. Quick heads up for everybody. That was slide 24. And today I am going to slide 62. So we are going to run super late, but I am going until we are done. This could be a 2-hour adventure, but just imagine this is a mini conference workshop. So I went through this slide, yes. All right, now we got to talk about this crap. Democratize, Decentralize, Retrofit, and Upskill are also aspirologies, and we need to say no to all of them. The word democratizing implies that it's not a democracy now. The implication is that CX are not friendly collaborators. They're evil dictators who must be stopped and their power removed. I hear people say, no, democratizing means we're sharing CX work with others, breaking down silos and improving collaboration. But are you sure that's what that means? Are you sure that's what your teammates expect? When democratization is used around CX or UX, it's typically directly meant or implied to mean a desire to change the balance of power so non-CX teammates are more equally involved in CX work and decisions. That is the definition of the word democracy. Why do we rush to give up our power and let others make decisions in our domain? And then we complain that our workplace has such low CX maturity and we need to do more evangelism about our importance. You're giving teammates mixed messages. And which other roles at our companies are surrendering their power and control? I don't see DevOps trying to give up control of the decisions in their domain in the hopes that everyone will feel more included in DevOps. Aspirologies, democratization, and decentralization are things we do to ourselves or allow to be done to us in response to crappy books, articles, and speakers, and it's hurting us. If you're using the word democratization to mean sharing and collaboration, then please use the word collaborating. Democratization often means that someone wants a CX or UX expert to teach everybody to do their job. That would lead to the democracy everybody's demanding. I've even seen job descriptions that ask for an expert UX practitioner, but then the details say, you're just there to teach others to do UX work, or you're just there to facilitate team efforts, to learn and do research and design. Sounds familiar, Lean UX. Sadly, we're falling for this right now. We are so desperate to evangelize UX and hope that someone at our company cares about our jobs that we say yes to this. Yes, we'll train business analysts to interview customers. Yes, we'll train product managers to do usability testing. As an example, someone sent me a job description for what was called a UX research coach. You must have at least 7 years as a UX researcher or research strategist. You must show that you have at least 3 years teaching UX research. You have to prove you are good with instructional design and adult learning methodologies. This is some sort of new unicorn, and it's also that you can not do the research yourself, but instead spend your workdays teaching non-CX and non-UX UX teammates to do research. This job was posted at Mural, which makes me feel a little better about being a paid customer of Miro. Hashtag not sponsored, and Miro, please don't copy Mural on this one. Only 13 applications after being posted for over a week. I wonder if that's because it's a unicorn or if it's because few people want to sign up to undo their own specialty. The job description says, and quote, "And while we're growing our UX research team fast, we don't want to take over all customer conversations. We don't want to deliver insights to our product makers or get their buy-in on our recommendations. Instead, we want to coach them on the art and science of user research so they can benefit from doing good research firsthand. We want to level up research skills across the design and product organizations and beyond so that the team's passion for customers results in quality insights about them." Are you having flashbacks to the slide about biases and logical fallacies? You should. Evidently, the team's passion for customers means not having specialists get us the research data that would guide us. The UX research team is an evil pile of people who are taking over customer conversations, whatever that means. So let's make sure those UX researchers aren't the only ones doing UX research. And hands up, which of you has worked at a company where UX was so freaking dominant that it took over all customer conversations? Not a thing. The quote on the screen is more manipulation, and I want you to get better at recognizing it. For years, we've been told to get alignment and buy-in on our recommendations. Now you're being told that you want to coach others to do your job because that's how passionate people do good research. Did we hypnotize you well enough so that now you think you want this? Did we trick you into believing that if you want quality insights from good research, then you want to teach others at our company to be able to do that research themselves? Have you ever sat around thinking, you know what I wish I could change at my job? I wish we could coach product managers and other non-UX roles to do my work. You've never wished for that. But we say yes to bullshit like this job description because we think or hope it'll get people caring about our jobs and our customers. We didn't notice that no other domain at our company is doing this. Nobody's demanding that product be democratized and that product managers teach others to do product management. Nobody is hiring a development coach so that product UX and marketing can get better at writing code so we can all be engineers. This happens in no other domain, which means you have to say no when you see this. Saswati is a freaking hero. Find her April 2020 article on Medium called Undemocratizing User Research. She's a UX research manager at WhatsApp and previously worked at Google and Uber. But even if she had no famous names on her resume, her article is wonderful. She writes about spending 1.5 years trying to democratize research at one of her jobs. She talks about why they did it and how it went badly. She concludes that yes, democratizing research is a bad idea, and after 1.5 years of trying, she would know. Here are a few quotes from her article that hit the center of the target. Quote, "In almost 100% of the cases, our teams were unable to analyze the whole data effectively, or they left out lots of things to be able to make the final analysis, synthesis, and storytelling manageable." Ugh. Quote, "The ambitious were burnt out, and the less ambitious lowered the quality of their output or just gave up." Quote, "Trying to democratize research with non-researchers is the end of meaningful, high-quality, direction-changing understanding of user behavior." Quote, "By enabling others to do ad hoc research, we make our discipline cheap. As we agree to train others in research in the interest of being good partners to product or design, very little good comes out of it for our discipline in the long run. I think we have some learning to do here from engineering, where their specialized knowledge is valued for what it is." End quote. Go girl. When a product team needs another product manager, they request the budget for another product manager. I bet that nobody higher in the organization says, perhaps instead of hiring an experienced product manager, let's just find a developer or marketer we already have and teach them product management. Someone makes the case for needing qualified workers on their team and they get that budget. Why aren't we doing that? Every time you teach someone else our jobs and let them guess at our work, you teach leadership that you didn't really need that qualified practitioner. Anybody can do this, and it's easy to learn and easy to do. Remind everybody at your company that other domains request the budget to hire qualified workers, and they get that budget. They are not told to train people we already have to do this work. Remind others that you are not just asking for someone to get some Microsoft Excel training with Excel on fire. Learn pivot tables and advanced functions. This isn't training courses on accessibility that will upskill people and improve their work and how they do it. You're asking someone to learn some or all of an entire full-time job. Meanwhile, you won't even hire a junior researcher or designer without a year of previous real work experience. Your company does not hire CX or UX workers with zero experience. That means your company has already drawn a line in the sand and wants, let's say, 1 year of experience. 1 year of real work experience is 30 hours per week for 49 weeks, accounting for breaks, lunch, and days off. That's nearly 1,500 hours of experience before your company will even consider a candidate. Some companies won't even consider someone who graduated a boot camp or from a university without showing a year of real work experience. This means that months or years of education do not qualify someone to work in CX or UX at your company. That's our standard. We won't consider someone ready to do CX or UX work at our company without them having nearly 1,500 hours of previous experience. Important question for our teams. And leadership. Why doesn't that standard hold true for internal workers? Why aren't we holding business analysts, product managers, engineers, marketers, and others to this standard? Make someone answer that question. Get it in writing. Why does our domain's minimum hiring standard go out the window when the company thinks it can save money by training the people it already has? Why are we giving UX work to people who wouldn't qualify to do a UX job at our company? We won't hire a newbie who already did months or years of training, but we'll take internal newbies and hope to train them? This is broken. All CX and UX work is really complex and requires a variety of abilities across a range of methodologies, tasks, and steps. Does it make sense to try to quickly upskill something this complex? This isn't like, hey, we wish you were better at spreadsheets. Let's get you some spreadsheet training. This is someone's specialized full-time job. People get master's degrees in this. It's not quick professional development or upskilling. We know that upskilling, professional development, and getting some training are typically for tools and skills that are usually easy to learn quickly. We know that that doesn't describe any of our work. We can clearly see how little people understand what we do. But let's consider a possibility. If a product manager gets some training and now does UX work, that person is still a product manager. If a business analyst now does some UX work, they're still a business analyst. The engineer doing some UX work is still an engineer on the engineering team. None of them become UX workers who have UX managers. They stay in their domain and they are managed within their domain. And if they spend enough of their time doing UX work, we might need to grow our product management and business analysis teams. We'll hire more of them because they're splitting their time between their work and ours. Notice whose team isn't growing? CX or UX. I can't prove this, but I would not be surprised if companies specifically wanted to avoid growing the CX or UX department because growth often comes with power. We might expect more levels of management. We might expect more budget and resources to do our jobs well. We might expect a vice president of CX or UX, or even a chief experience officer at the top of our own organizational branch. Nope, our workplace is sure that we need UX work done, but it doesn't have to be by UX experts. Grow all the other teams. Hire UX people who can train others to do UX work that we can just check that work off the list. Consider that Aspirology workshops and having UX train others to do their jobs are part of a written or unwritten plan to keep the CX or UX team smaller and therefore less powerful. This means we're going to need to do a cost-benefit analysis of training versus hiring qualified people. Y'all want to speak the business's language? Here we go. We could hire a qualified CX or UX practitioner who can hit the ground running and do the work we need done. Just for the sake of numbers, let's say a senior UX researcher in the United States makes an average of $110,000 a year, again, on average across America. You can try the same calculations for wherever you live and your local currency. Or we could train non-UX people we already have. Let's imagine that we're going to teach senior product managers to do UX research work. Glassdoor makes it look like, on average, a senior product manager in America might make close to $130,000 a year. Oops, we're going to take someone who is higher paid and teach them to do lower paid work? Nobody who has studied business or finance would say that makes sense. Okay, so instead, let's pretend we're going to only train people who make less money than the job we should just be hiring. This means mid-level or junior product managers, business analysts, and engineers. People with just a few years of work experience in their own field are now going to be trained on a completely different field. Now we need to delay their regular work in their area of expertise to instead start going to UX school or do the actual UX work. Does this mean that there is less product management work getting done? Does this mean that engineering will need more sprints to get the same work done because we took people away from coding and testing? What does it cost our company to delay work we had planned or reduce our efficiency? Someone should be able to put a price tag on that. Or did we distract people from their regular work so much that we ended up having to hire another product manager or engineer to make up for those missing hours? Well, what did that cost us? Now let's skip to the end of the story. Though you can imagine there are other costs and questions here, like how often are they getting training? Is their work being checked by the trainer? Or are they getting some training and then they're just off guessing at the work themselves? The training and coaching assume a happy path. It assumes that people we are training will end up so good at research that we won't miss having not hired a specialist. Will the UX research coach have the power to throw someone out of the coaching program if they're not able to grasp the concepts or apply those concepts correctly with science and proper technique? We can't assume that anyone learning any particular skill will end up good at it. There are too many ways to be bad at research. If you're not a great planner, recruiter, asker, or neutral listener, if you can't recognize your biases and put them aside, if you're bad at logic, deductive reasoning, or critical thinking, not everybody who gets research training will end up good at it. Even some people getting master's degrees might at some moment realize they're just not cut out for this. If the research is being done poorly or is being manipulated, what is the cost of feeding flawed business intelligence into the system? If we have, sorry, I've got my clicks out of order here. If we have incorrect information guiding our strategies, initiatives, teams, products, or features, wow, that will cost us. Ouch, ouch. Got all that? Now let's sum it up on a fresh slide. Pow. Let's imagine that our specialized UX research coach with 7 years of experience of doing research and 3 years as a teacher and instructional designer is going to be paid, I'm making this up, $130,000. We can't be hiring this person to train just one person. Let's pretend this person is going to coach 20 people who are now going to allocate, let's say, 10% of their time to UX research. That's only 3 hours per week. So that's possible. If the people we're training make $95,000 per year, then $190,000 of their salaries go to them learning and doing UX work. But 20 people at 10% utilization would be the same as hiring 2 people full-time. That's the alternative to this whole plan and program. We just hire 2 people who are 100% allocated to do the UX research that we need done, versus having 20 people learn it and stab at it a few hours a week. Consider efficiency, which companies love to talk about. Experienced specialists will be better at strategy and tactics than any newbie guessing at research. Experienced specialists will be better at every step of research than someone just starting to learn about it now. Efficiency for UX decreases when our work is being guessed at by lightly trained newbies. This may cause project delays. It could cause projects to head in the wrong directions because the data driving and informing us is flawed or wrong. It's hard to calculate the cost of this, but hopefully someone can estimate what bad research or testing can cost our company in wasted internal time, as well as burned customer trust and poor user outcomes. But for our sample math, let's be conservative and let's pretend that thanks to delays, mistakes, lost revenue, having to fix products and features later, flawed research and testing, let's pretend it costs us $200,000 in a year. It's probably way more when you think about what an agile team of 6 engineers gets paid for sprints of work. But we'll say $200,000 to be conservative. That means our training adventure costs $520,000. Or we can spend $520,000 on one lead researcher for $130,000, one senior researcher for $110,000, and 4 juniors at $70,000 each. 20 people trying to quickly learn and then part-time guess at specialized work, or 5 qualified workers hitting the ground running and working efficiently, not making many mistakes, not delaying other projects. Looking at costs, benefits, and possible consequences, training others makes no sense. This is what speaking the business's language looks like. It's down to money. Show them how they will save time, money, mistakes, and having to fix things later when we hire the right people to do great work the first time, which is also agile and lean. And I'll be talking next week about how to staff up your department with the right ratio of specialties. Remember that everything you do, trains everybody at your company on what UX is and what we do. If you're taking people who wouldn't qualify for a full-time research job and you're trying to quickly retrofit them into being researchers, then how can you possibly expect to teach non-CX workers that CX is a really skilled specialty that requires people with scientific or specific education, training, or experience? You reinforce that this is easy to learn and easy to do when it's not. You probably don't want engineering or product to think that anybody can do UX. Just watch some videos, read a few articles, and take an online course. If you don't want them to imagine that BAs, product managers, and developers can be quickly retrofitted into doing UX work with minimal training, then inside the UX department, you shouldn't be retrofitting people. Fight for headcount. If you retrofit people into jobs they might still be guessing at, you prove leadership right when they thought you didn't need to hire more people. Prove that you need specialists because you don't have enough now, and you can't easily train people to be a specialist. And not everybody doing job A will end up good at job B. Not every architect is a great researcher. Not every researcher is a great architect or designer. And your department is already spread thin and overworked. Taking people off their current work to try to learn and do a whole new job role means that other work isn't getting done. You'll be poking more holes in the bucket and draining people fast. It creates what I call a moving target job. Hey, you're not doing your wireframes. Well, I'm trying to research. So you switch to wireframes. Hey, now where's your research? Well, I was doing wireframes. This is risky. It's not like your UX team was just sitting around with nothing to do and they thought they might learn some new skills with their downtime. And it's risky because we're teaching workers in other domains that it's easy to just start doing UX work with minimal training. It's risky because it might affect worker morale. When I worked at Macy's.com, the new VP of UX announced that product managers could run usability tests after 1 hour of training. Our researchers had master's degrees, but product managers only needed an hour of training. This was one of many new policies that led to a giant UXodus. Within weeks, all of the researchers quit, and most of the rest of the UX department, which was around 40 people, quit within about 6 months. Good people won't stay. People who leave will warn others about why they left. You will have trouble attracting and retaining real talent. Just going to take a drink before the next chapter. Sorry, we're going to run very late today. I've got lots of slides, but I think this is important. If you've got to go, come on back later. This will be archived on the YouTube channel. So let's take a look at costs and budgets of all these Aspirologies I've been talking about. If you are facilitating Aspirologies, setting up these workshops, participating in them, there's a lot at stake. Nobody wants to say, wow, we just spent $50,000 this week on design thinking training and exercises, and it kind of sucked. I'd imagine the failure rate of Aspirologies is actually quite high when looked at end to end with financials. But those using Aspirologies as evangelism or emotional workshop theater tend to protect them by focusing on emotional outcomes. I found these quotes online when I was trying to research for tangible benefits of design thinking and design sprints. Listen for biases, logical fallacies, lack of evidence, and manipulation. Quote, we saved this client a year or more of effort. Quote, we helped the team realize there were opportunities for fundamental product changes aimed at our less sophisticated customers. Quote, we learned a lot about which of our users wanted more customization. Quote, we had camaraderie with coworkers and appreciated each other's points of view. Quote, we had a solid foundation for a tool that would fill one of the company's most glaring functional gaps. End quote. CX does all of these things, and often in less biased and more customer-focused ways. CX would have been all over that glaring functional gap if someone gave us the appropriate time, budget, and resources. While our expertise is misunderstood, ignored, or never hired because unqualified people are doing CX work, companies imagine that we've got to find other ways to handle these things. The answers have been in front of them the whole time. CX experts. Are you calculating what these exercises cost? The cost to get people in a room and to have them stab at solutions? The time and money we spent pursuing the idea that won the popular vote? Whether or not it went to market? How much customer support had to help people with it? What it costs to fix later? Did we have concrete success criteria for design thinking efforts and exercises? You're not going to need Aspirologies if you hire great CX workers and empower them. We can save you months and years of wasted effort. We can keep you from taking products and services in directions unlikely to be received well by customers. We were already thinking about the less sophisticated persona that nobody wanted to build for because they were probably just an edge case. We identify opportunities to fundamentally change our products and services. It's our day-to-day job and doesn't require a special workshop or exercise. We mitigate risk reactively, proactively, and predictively. People love to tell me that Aspirologies and workshops work. I say based on what success criteria. If you didn't start with a measurement for success or failure, of course you'll want to just declare them winners. But this is business, and we're under pressure to speak the business's language. Without hard evidence of workshop results, we shouldn't say that taking people away from their mission-critical work for days or weeks to have some fun is worth it. I've also heard that Aspirology workshops work because attendees will notice how much better ideas and sketches coming from UX practitioners are, and these teammates will then value the work that qualified CX workers can do. That sounds like a little bit of a fantasy combined with a little bit of ego. What if someone else in the room makes better sketches or wireframes than yours? What if they're really good at drawing? And what if their idea is really excellent? Did you still prove the value of UX? You will instead have completely proven that UX shouldn't make a move without everybody sketching ideas. Be careful what you wish for. Let's notice that the idea of, I need to show other people how good I am at something other people don't understand, is accidentally ego-driven. Oop, I'm still here. The problem isn't that people don't understand how good you are at your job. The problem is that they don't understand your job. Non-CX roles at your company are rarely able to tell the difference between CX work done well and CX work done poorly. This is further blurred by Aspirologies and design by committee workshops. There's nothing in design thinking, design sprints, lean UX, or others that assesses, checks, or controls quality. Nothing requires or demands that CX work be done really well. You can absolutely jump into these Aspirologies with no research, no business intelligence on customers, and just guess and assume your way through everything. Just use the frameworks and exercises for guided guessing. When you're left to get CX or UX work done on your own time, you're not using design thinking exercises and design sprints. You're following user-centered design or some close cousin or derivative of it like Double Diamond. So why would we think that showing people non-UX exercises would teach them the value of UX? Workshop addictions can be easy to continue and enable when we are only looking at the value of the workshop emotionally. If you want to be more business-minded, you shouldn't say these worked without having success criteria that are met and then calculating everything that can be calculated. You will then be able to say, well, our last 5 workshops cost X dollars, and here are the outcomes for our customers and for the business. Or you might say, we spent X dollars on training and exercises, but the customers never saw these products. The ideas were scrapped. We are here to create customer satisfaction and satisfy business goals. If the workshops are not doing hopefully both, we should be smart and break the addiction. If we want to speak the business's language, which I'll talk about more in part 2 next week, then we have to calculate money saved, money spent, and money made. What did this workshop cost our company? Was this feature ever released? What did our total efforts cost, and what benefits or revenue did we gain? Which KPIs were met or exceeded? How did the customers perceive these features after they went live? What problems did we have to fix after launch or release? You should know the actual cost and ROI for a design sprint or team exercise. You should know how many of these workshops you're doing versus how many of their resulting ideas. Oh, thank you. Something exciting is happening. Thank you. You should know how many of these workshops you're doing versus how many of their resulting ideas ever get to market. I've got a wordy formula and I've put it up on the screen so those who are in the listen only mode, this is also in my book, you can search for it, but just to save time because I've got so many more slides today and I'm already at almost an hour and a half and I've got more slides. So lots of ways to calculate the costs and the workshop's ROI. Remember to have success criteria. So quickly there. And there is your budget to hire qualified people and grow your department. You might have paid $25,000 to a professional design sprint facilitator, $20,000 for the salaries of 8 people for a week of exercises and templates. If nothing happened after that week and the ideas died there, that's $45,000. You're well on your way to having money to hire a junior. Or you can buy 560 hours of a freelancer charging $80 an hour. Cancel 2 design sprints and you can hire a junior or mid-level practitioner for a whole freaking year. If teams of 6 engineers spent weeks and sprints building these ideas, you are adding tens of thousands of dollars to this total. That could go well. That could end up a total waste or anywhere in between. What did you pay the lean UX guys or famous people to train your company on approaches that don't work or undo our power, autonomy, and tasks? I can't confirm this, but I've heard that a guy I don't like charges $30,000 per day to train your company on things you wish you could later undo. You can bring him in for 2 or 3 days, or you can put that budget towards hiring a qualified full-time worker. Shifting away from endless workshops and poor training choices might give you the budget you wanted to just hire great people. So, what do we do instead? Not all workshops are created evil. A group meeting or workshop could be meaningful, actionable, and productive without the risk that UX seems codependent or unable to do our work without everybody helping us or letting everybody guess at our specialized tasks. Let's take a look at what we can do instead of Aspirologies. Get out of the building. Gather the cross-functional team and stakeholders, leadership, and hire if you can get them involved. Have them observe customer interviews and field studies to better understand customers' realities, or at least have them watching video clip montages later. This has to be better than guessing at customers' experiences in more Aspirology workshops. If your company insists on doing design sprints or other workshops, after they're done, get all of the sketched solutions and move the best ideas through our UCD process, whether or not they won the popular vote. I've seen some companies circumvent CX and UX and try to push the winning design sprint idea right into product management or engineering to be released to customers fast. Make sure product or feature ideas are given to you so you can shepherd any idea with deep customer value. We don't hang ideas at our desk and ask teammates to vote on the best one. We test with real and archetypal customers to determine the best executions of the best ideas. Don't let things happen in your domain by committee. Any team exercise or workshop we do must have success criteria and KPIs. Calculate costs and ROI. Watch workshop outputs. What did they cost in the short and long term? What did these workshops produce, if anything? Why did they fail? Having success criteria and better calculating costs and ROI will shine bright spotlights when the workshop declares outcomes like, everybody really enjoyed design thinking, or we had camaraderie and stakeholders felt involved. Shift terms to what you really mean. Talk about CX without evangelizing. Refer to your tasks and process. Every job at our company is complex. Don't water CX down to design thinking is 5 easy steps or something that sounds like it's made by Fisher-Price. Joe Rohde, retired senior vice president of Walt Disney Imagineering, recently posted to Instagram a long critique of creative brainstorming meetings. I'll read you some of it. Quote, "The brainstorming meeting, by which I mean the big room 40-person facilitated brainstorming meeting, the kind that has been productized, commodified, and industrialized to meet the needs of industry. Brainstorming meetings play into the perception of time value. Creative behavior should characterize the organization itself. In this way, unpredictable and serendipitous discoveries can emerge all the time. A massive world-changing idea can occur in an instant. It's impossible to calculate the time value of such an inspiration and cost per hours. What research has shown, including research which I myself have participated in, is that the most significant creative thought occurs in non-structured, non-focused, non-active time. Basically, when you're doing absolutely nothing, including talking. This pretty much describes the opposite of one of these frantic, loud, hyperactive, conversational brainstorming rooms where everybody's throwing around colored pieces of paper and scribbling with markers. Of course, a culture where some people are just walking around doing nothing some of the time drives managers absolutely crazy. So instead, we get the brainstorming meeting, a scheduled, approved, budgeted, limited, focused, and theoretically productive time when a display of creativity is allowed, but not non-active, silent, absorbed thought, the actual fountainhead of creativity. Instead, there is a kind of performative noise that looks like what people imagine creativity should be. Crazy! Brainstorming meetings are not going to go away. This is not because they are productive. It's because they meet the emotional needs of organizations. But you, the actual creative person, should not be deceived. You need quiet, unassigned, personal, reflective time for your brain to make the free associations from which creative ideas derive. Take it. Consider how and when, that was end quote. Consider how and where you tend to have your best ideas. Make sure you make that time for yourself and others. Leave room for creativity. And if your company or team has an emotional need for brainstorming, creativity, and innovation theater workshops, Ask them to hold them in someone else's domain. Marketing, sales, engineering, anybody want to start running multi-day creativity workshops? If no other domain wants these, use the fact that they are low value and unwanted to point out how for CX and UX they are also low value and unwanted. Remember that most Aspirology workshops and approaches claim to be able to reproduce our talents, skills, experience, and process in just a few short hours or days. But the core of our talents, skills, experience, and process is critical thinking. That's mostly it. If you're bad at critical thinking, you will probably be bad at CX and UX work. On my Delta CX channel, I often put on what I call my critical thinking hat. What you can do instead of Aspirologies is just critical thinking. Even if you think you're doing design thinking, where's your critical thinking? You could confidently design think and design sprint the completely wrong solution for customers because there was no critical thinking. You were mindlessly following a framework that says everybody have empathy, sketch screens, and solve problems. Here's something that I read when I was researching for my Delta CX book and trying to find positive case studies about design thinking. It was written by a guy who worked at an agency. Quote, "An example is a request from a new client to redesign a bike part. Sales have slowed, and they believe that a new design will spark renewed interest and help fend off competitors. Absent of design thinking, we would dive in and create a new slick design for this specific bike part. Employing the design thinking process, however, we would get dramatically different results. The 5-step design thinking process reveals that the problem can't be resolved with a newly designed bike part." End quote. This isn't design thinking. This is critical thinking and not being your client's order taker or grunt working pair of hands. Design thinking doesn't save an agency or a worker from the mistake of redesigning a bike part when perhaps there is a better solution. Someone doing design thinking could easily empathize with customers who would prefer a redesigned bike part, consider the problem this redesigned bike part would solve, ideate, prototype, test, and declare the redesigned bike part a success and exactly what customers needed. Design thinking and Aspirologies don't automatically keep people from taking products or services in the wrong direction. We need critical thinkers, our curious researchers, and low-ego action heroes who would start with the question, is this what customers really need? Or as Don Norman might say, is this the right problem to solve, or are we solving symptoms of a larger or other problem? If that's not being asked, or if the design thinking exercise or design sprint seeks to stay with what a stakeholder has described or suggested, that activity can suffer from garbage in, garbage out. If a stakeholder shows up and says this bike part is a problem and we need to redesign it, who will stand up and declare that the stakeholder might be wrong? Therefore, design thinking is not what's giving you direction you didn't have before. Curious, critical thinkers who are empowered to break out of stakeholder requests and clients' predetermined ideas are who drive product and service concepts and designs toward better customer value, lower business risk, and better outcomes. You can have design thinking without critical thinking, and you can have critical thinking without design thinking. So what else should we do? The best approach for UX is to focus on task analysis, which if you're a fan of the YouTube channel, you've seen in the micro lessons. It's normally done after qualitative research like observing users and interviewing them. You can't do a great task analysis based on surveys or what we guess about people. Even diary studies can leave out steps or workarounds because the user thinks these aren't important to mention. If we had observed these people, we would have noticed the missing puzzle pieces. Task analysis starts with a researcher creating a flow, detailing every step the user takes. This is the what. What did they do? The researcher then adds notes related to the tools, knowledge, and workarounds the user employed to try to accomplish that step. This is the how of each step. We also add issues and concerns, anything that could be an obstacle for this step of the process. Researchers then analyze the task flow and what we learned from our observations and interviews. Look for the knowledge gaps, the difference between what we assumed people knew or understood and what they actually know or understand. You'll see this in observational research, especially when people use workarounds, get stuck, or give up. We then create an optimized task flow by looking at anywhere the system can take workload off the user. This isn't just automation and making the system perform steps of the task. This is also intelligently and deliberately architecting our systems to account for what we expect people to know or remember. Build knowledge into the system, deliberately architect for where people used outside tools or workarounds and where they had obstacles. All right, let's get to know my ideation workshop. Thanks to everybody for staying late. I still have like 15 slides. Another thing you can do instead of Aspirologies is my Delta CX Ideation workshop. It can take me around a half hour to explain it, so this is the short version. The full version is in my book. Note that these timings are approximate. You can spend more or less time on the things as you see fit. There are also strategically planned breaks here, but I'm excluding those details to get through this fast. The workshop is run by a senior level or higher CX architect or researcher. This is not for agile coaches, product managers, and design thinkers. I don't offer a certificate in this. We have to own this. After some usual starting formalities, we get to know customers through your research data, video clips, task analyses, customer journey maps, personas, everything you have that makes sure everybody in the room understands our customers as well as you do. Next is the focus. What problem or challenge are we brainstorming today? Do we have any customer feedback or support tickets around this issue? Share those and help people get to know the problem as well as you helped them get to know customers. Don't discuss competitors or what you've tried in the past. The goal of each idea storm is for attendees to write or type out as many ideas as possible. You can use paper sticky notes or you can use virtual sticky notes. The format of the idea should be idea because persona or customer type, needs, desire, task accomplishment, what reason, etc. You can abbreviate this as a reminder by using X because Y needs Z. That should look and feel familiar to your team since it's close to how user stories are formatted. For each idea storm, we also want a way to keep track of who posted that idea. That might be part of your online collaboration system, like this screenshot from Miro, or you might ask people to add their names. Next, we introduce what we know about what competitors have done in this space, are doing now, or rumored to do in the future. Now that people know that, time for another idea storm. The goal here is to innovate past competitors and fulfill customers' needs better than competitors. Next is your idea gives me another idea. Let attendees read around the board and post any new ideas that are sparked from reading other ideas. Remind them this is not about agreeing or voting. This is for if someone else's idea makes you think of a fresh idea or a variation that isn't on the board. Then we have a break that isn't a break for the facilitator. They'll review all of the ideas, find the patterns or themes, and reorganize the board. No, that's not done as a team lean UX. If there are multiple notes for identical ideas, keep one and move the duplicates to the side of the board out of sight. If there's an idea that you can't make sense of, group it in a special area for questions and clarification. It's okay to have helpers from the CX or UX department for this, or do it yourself. After the break, introduce the themes to the attendees. You don't have to read all the ideas out loud. They've hopefully already seen them. Only your themes are new to them. Plus, now is the time to clarify any ideas you didn't understand. Where many workshop models want you to vote for what people like or the best idea, Delta CX's Ideation workshop has attendees voting on priority. Priority doesn't mean the coolest idea, the cheapest to do, or the fastest to do. Encourage attendees to disregard any concerns or doubts about budget or timing. Think about our customers and the original problem or goal and pick the 5 ideas you believe we should do first. In other workshops, people might walk away feeling, nobody liked my idea. Here, ideas that received few or no votes might still be good ideas, but maybe just not top priorities. All ideas will be taken back to the CX department for further consideration, and we should let people know that. After the ideation workshop, check all of the ideas for possible opportunities and customer value. We always credit people by name for their contribution so they will feel appreciated and know that we don't take credit for other people's ideas. The app now controls the room temperature, thanks to Pat, who came up with this in our July ideation workshop. You could even make little certificates, badges, or awards when people's ideas are used. This helps people want to collaborate with us more without demanding control of our process. They'll trust us. Then, finally, glow in the happiness that you didn't have to use any particular drawing of a screen. The happiness that after the workshop, nobody felt married to how this thing looks and works. We just have ideas. You figure out how those look and work. You work with potential and current customers to make sure executions of ideas truly work for them. You owned this. Nobody decided for you. People collaborated. It was one day or less. You still have your power. It keeps you in the driver's seat, it includes teammates, and it collects fresh ideas from others. You will end up with a treasure chest full of ideas for now and the future. If you don't want to have people vote on priorities and you'd instead like to use a prioritization framework, you can consider using the Delta CX Decision Matrix. That's a prioritization matrix that uses 4 factors to judge priorities. First, strategic, you'll be rating from 0 to 5. Strategy or goal achievement, letter S. Does this work item or decision achieve stated goals or play strongly into our strategy? Rate this from 0 to 5, where 5 indicates that this achieves a goal or is highly relevant to our strategy. If this is someone's ego or pet project and has nothing to do with strategy or goals, please give it a 0. Next, number of people affected, letter N. Our decisions can be weighted by how many of our potential or current customers this might affect. Rate this from 0 to 5, where 5 indicates that this affects 100% of our customers. Nothing affects 0 customers, but if it affects very few or it's an extreme edge case, you can give this a 0. Urgency or severity, letter U. How time-sensitive is this challenge or decision? How much are customers impacted? Is this mission critical? Rate this from 0 to 5, with 5 being the most urgent or severe. We would only give something a score of 0 if it wouldn't matter if you took care of this now or in 5 years. And finally, cost to reverse, letter C. Most decisions are reversible with enough time and money. Rate this from 0 to 5, with 5 being the most expensive and time-consuming to change or reverse. If something is inexpensively and easily reversible, you could give it a 0 or 1. And due to the importance of this dimension, we are giving cost to reverse extra weight. Double this score when adding up your final score. So the lowest possible score is 0, which means this is unrelated to our goals, affects nearly 0 customers, not on fire, and easy to undo later. The highest possible score is 25, meaning it's highly tied to our goals and strategies, affects all of our customers, it's urgently on fire, and it would be wildly expensive or time-consuming to change later. These types of matrices often seek to help you decide when to do something, whether to do it at all or eliminate it, or whether you should delegate it. In addition to those reasons, we would also want to use this matrix to decide if it's okay for a non-CX worker to perform CX tasks and when we would allow a flaw in our products to go live to the public. Never sounds like the right answers to both, but when stuck in difficult positions at our workplaces, we sometimes have to make a call. This matrix will help us with that, as well as communicating our reasoning. You could say that the need for a decision has snuck up on you, SNUC. The Delta CX Ideation Workshop can run up to 1 day long. If you look at the schedule and time allotted for various tasks, you can see where you could shorten things to make it less than a day, possibly even a half a day. You know what would go great with this? Now that we understand users, customers, and consumers, and we've brainstormed some general concepts and ideas, a risk mitigation workshop, especially if we found that we're giving ideas high scores for cost to reverse in the decision matrix. We need to dive into that risk, how it can be mitigated, and which teammates might own those responsibilities. A conversation I had with Jeremy Kriegel last week inspired me to try to invent a risk mitigation workshop. I challenged myself 5 days ago to invent one, and I spent about 2 days on it. This is version 1, so if you can improve upon it, please do. I'm sure it'll evolve. But let's see what I came up with. Delta CX Risk Mitigation Workshop. To run this workshop, you will need attendees. I try to keep my workshops to 10 attendees or fewer. You can invite stakeholders if you want. Try to keep them from overpowering, dominating, or claiming the risks really aren't so bad or worth documenting. Note that you probably want someone from IT security and someone from legal if you want to think of risks that product, engineers, business analysts, and you might miss. You'll also want at least one assistant or co-facilitator. There are some rounds to this workshop that would really help if someone is preparing them in the background while you're facilitating the current round. Also note that like the Delta CX Ideation workshop, you must be a senior level or higher UX practitioner. This is not for product managers, business analysts, engineers, or visual designers to run. If you want to co-facilitate with a project manager, that sounds great to me since we do need them to shepherd the outcomes of this workshop after it's done. I'm using Miro, Google Sheets, and Mentimeter. Hashtag not sponsored. You use what you like. A risk mitigation workshop would happen before budgeting and scheduling because it would help us understand some of the time, money, and resources needed, not just to create a thing, but to make sure that we have eliminated as much as possible the chances of flaws, failures, and other risks. The workshop would highlight what we don't know, where we are guessing or assuming, and what would cause small or large failures. This is why even a mini Delta CX Ideation workshop happening before the risk mitigation workshop could help. It could give the attendees a chance to deeply understand the customers we're focusing on, as well as the aspects of the consumer's task, workflow, or experience that we're looking to address or improve. Run them back to back on 2 days in a row so people don't feel workshop fatigue, but still have the information fresh in their minds. When it comes to brainstorming risks, you are looking for anything that could be problems with the quality of our products or services in the customer's eyes. Remember that some risks are internal to our company, but many risks should show that the risk is not delivering value to customers and users. Agile says priority 1 is customer satisfaction. Lean says priority 1 is reducing defects. But what if our solution isn't a solution? What if we didn't solve the customer's problems? What if we made the system worse? What if our feature is hard to use or hard to learn? These are possibilities and therefore risks. Something a bad actor might do. This might be related to legal issues, security, privacy, and crime. Diversity, equity, and accessibility. Did we leave anybody out when considering our target audiences? Are we pretending to know or empathize with communities who aren't represented in our teams or in our workshops? That's risk. Which of our assumptions, if partially or wholly incorrect, could lead to the failure of this project, service, product, or feature? Teams typically work from data, information, and business intelligence. You will need to identify which pieces of information are guesses, assumptions, hypotheses, facts, came from surveys, which might be flawed, or came from properly planned and executed qualitative research. Consider resources, skills, technology, team relationships, communication processes, and outside forces like competition and consumer demand. Are any of these threats less than optimal, inefficient, or in some sort of trouble? Make sure this list and anything you think should be added is available to attendees for the brainstorming. Create a Miro board for people to brainstorm all of the possible risks, or use my starter board at deltacx.link/risk-mitigation-Miro, M-I-R-O. I would give them 15 minutes for this. Of course, these are anonymous since some people won't want to see who spoke the truth. There aren't really any wrong answers. We're open to anything someone thinks is a possible risk for our project, team, customer, or company. If you want, you can create frames or areas of your board relating to different themes and ask people to put their notes with the matching theme. Themes could include legal, security, and privacy, customer experience, engineering and tech, diversity and equity, accessibility, customer support, marketing, and sales. Any themes you think will help organize the board a bit and spark ideas. And you know me, I like to give people a second round of 15 minutes of brainstorming. Your idea gives me an idea. Let people read the board and add any ideas or variations they think are missing. To explain the idea of a risk, I'm going to focus a little on my sticky note that's about something I actually saw happen to someone. She had left an abusive spouse and later couldn't figure out how he was logging into her Facebook and posting. He was logging into her Gmail. Every time she tried to reset her password, there he was, trying to lock her out of her accounts. She finally realized that he had her old phone, which was still logged into Facebook and Gmail. Even though I helped her set up two-factor authentication, neither Gmail nor Facebook logged the old phone out. In fact, they both saw her old phone as trusted devices that could bypass the two-factor authentication. Now that's some risk. For round 3, give everybody a 15-minute break while you change the board and sticky notes around. Space the risks out and maybe put them in Miro frames so that each frame has one sticky note. This is the risk, and now we're going to dive in deeper on each risk for round 3. Give your frame lots of room since we have more rounds of sticky notes to go. You can decide the best amount of time, but I might give people 30 minutes to look through the board and under each sticky note, add their sticky notes for assumptions, knowledge gaps, unknowns, and reasons. What contributes to this risk? Is it because we made assumptions or guesses? We used untested hypotheses? We're missing information? How might we end up with this risk or what might lead to the risk? Let people brainstorm these or add what they know is the reality. We want to see if we know why this risk exists, the root causes. This should help us later avoid these risks in the future. In the future, we shouldn't assume that all customers have control over their devices. Maybe that device was lost, stolen, or in the hands of a bad actor. MVPs are risky. Let's look at why. Tell everybody that sticky note colors will matter in the next round, so please do not use yellow or blue for these. If you have to sneak in and change colors, please do it. Now let's jump into round 4, possible outcomes. I'd give this round 30 minutes also. What could happen because we have this risk, or if the risk ends up happening? Internal factors like wasted worker time, morale could decrease, wasted budgets, inefficient processes, needing customer support to help people more, etc. External factors like bad press, stock price, public trust, damage to the environment, advantages for our competitors, etc. This is also where we would include the possible outcomes of not delivering value, benefit, or solutions to some or all of our customers. You might want to use colors to separate these. Perhaps internal factors have yellow stickies, external has blue. Please choose colorblind-friendly colors when color coding anything. You don't have to change the board from the previous round. I moved the previous stickies just because of the limits of a PowerPoint slide. So for example here, possible internal outcomes include wasted budget and internal efficiencies because we might have to diagnose and fix this problem later if we're not going to deal with it now. Not understanding or fixing this problem now would be the risk. What if this flaw violates GDPR or gets us fined or sued? Possible external outcomes include bad press when people hear that we have this security and privacy flaw, and people dealing with bad actors could be hurt or abused by someone controlling their account. It's time for everybody to take a break, possibly for lunch. You and anybody helping you will be copying and pasting each risk into a template like you see on the screen. Note that your assistant or co-facilitator could have been setting this up during rounds 3 and 4. Order of risks doesn't matter. You just want everybody to see each risk that was on the board in a single question. Then duplicate that and change the question to another risk. Here I'm using Mentimeter, not sponsored. You can use any tool you like for polls that will record these types of responses and show you the average. And this is also nice because it's anonymous. So I've got a rating scale for each risk, and I'm asking people to score things on a scale of 1 to 5 in each of 3 dimensions. Probability, or how likely is it for this risk to actually happen? Some risks are rare and unlikely. Some risks are quite possible or already happening. Then we have 2 scores for severity, one for internal and one for external. How severe is this internally to our company or externally to the users, the public, society, especially in light of the possible outcomes we just worked on? When people come back from break or lunch, they can join the Mentimeter voting from their computer or phone. They can quickly give their assessments of the probability and with the probability and severity scores. Give people 1 minute per risk to go through all of the risks. If you have 50 risks, set a timer for 50 or 60 minutes. If you have 100 risks, you're probably going to need like 90 minutes, maybe even more. Mentimeter will average up these 3 scores, and this will end up in a spreadsheet I'll show you later. You don't have to build these back into your Miro board. Round 6 should go fairly fast, perhaps 15 minutes. Someone must agree to be the owner for each risk. It could be 2 co-owners, but it's better if one person is the go-to person for this single risk and ultimately responsible. I'm not saying one person is responsible for all the risks. Different people would be assigned to different risks. And you don't want to name a team of people since they might mess up who's really shepherding this issue. You want one human. Hopefully people will volunteer themselves, and hopefully they'll be from the domain where this risk is the most relevant or severe. It's also best to have just one owner, since there are a few more pieces of information we're going to need for our spreadsheet. It's best if one person knows this is clearly assigned to them and them alone. While everybody takes a break, you are moving everything into my risk spreadsheet. If you have assistants or co-facilitators, they can already be working on this while people are scoring in round 5, and while people are deciding owners in round 6. Then you can be ready for round 7, which is finishing off the risk mitigation spreadsheet. Not every column might apply, but chances are that most will. Try to fill it out as completely as possible. Most of the columns come from the sticky notes. Scoring comes from your Mentimeter voting, and it's the average of the scores people gave each dimension for that risk. Round everything to 1 decimal or however you like. My spreadsheet will turn these into scores and a final all-in-one score shown as a percentage. The rest of the workshop requires risk owners to fill in the last 3 columns of the spreadsheet for their risks. The 3 columns are how the risk will be monitored, measurements, metrics, KPIs, and OKRs, and signs that the risk is eliminated. People who aren't risk owners could leave, but it could be worth keeping them around in case they want to discuss any of these with teammates. I created a spreadsheet with the scoring calculations built in. You can grab it from deltacx.link/risk-mitigation-sheet. But now we have a plan. We have our risks. We're aware of why we have them and the damage they could do internally and externally. Owners can take them back to teams and prioritize them. We know how we plan to monitor and mitigate them, how we'll measure this, and what we're looking for to know that this risk has been greatly reduced or completely eliminated. I would probably also end the workshop by making sure that a project manager shepherds the spreadsheet from here. They should check in with risk owners at least weekly to get updates on each risk and if it has been reduced or eliminated. Or if we have any other news like, holy cats, it happened and here are the consequences. For the half-day version, you could end the workshop after round 4, possible outcomes. You and a project manager or the project manager alone can then assign risk owners. The risk owners can complete the spreadsheet with the scoring, how the risks will be monitored, the best measurements and metrics, and the signs that the risk has been eliminated. You might wonder, could we do a risk mitigation workshop after an Aspirology workshop? Like after a design sprint or some design thinking exercises, you want to take a look at risks and how you'll handle them? You certainly could, but warning, since the risk mitigation workshop is designed to look closely at our assumptions, guesses, and risks, and since Aspirology workshops are often a sticky note festival of guessing, assuming, speculation, and more guessing, you might undo your Aspirology workshop. If that is your goal, I love you and go for it. Here's another scenario. You were just added to a project that's already planned and it's in flight. The engineers have started. Now they want UX to just take a look at it or sprinkle on some UX. This could also be an MVP that is being planned or in flight. You could certainly do a risk mitigation workshop about this project. What risks does this project have? Did you take a look at what engineers are building and realize it looks like Swiss cheese on a dead squirrel? Are you watching the product manager remove or deprioritize features likely to have good customer value, possibly leaving a minimally desirable product? Then let's discuss and document the risks of releasing this to trial and paying customers. Try my workshop. Okay, I did it in 2 hours like I thought. Next Monday's probably going to be 2 hours too. Thank you for the 10 people who stayed for 2 hours. Any questions, comments, thoughts? I saw a lot of reactions to the Lean UX book. Kayleen said it's like an abusive relationship, and I agree. I'd actually written that at one point, and then I took it out because I thought it was possibly insulting and insensitive to people who are in abusive relationships, but it does feel that way. Bill had also written in and said, I saw this firsthand. Marketing, this was when I had the slide that maybe they don't want the UX team to grow. And Bill had written, seen this firsthand. Marketing, BA, and product managers are doing UX task and research. Kayleen says, woo, Kayleen is still with us. So I'll just see if there's any last questions. Otherwise, we'll sign off for now. Remember that tomorrow is office hours, Ask Me Anything. And then, let's see, Wednesday, no stream, Friday, reaction stream. So really we're back on Monday, where I'm going to do the other half of this, which is understanding agile and lean, real agile and real lean, and how we can take our work, our processes, our staffing, and be more agile and lean. So it's going to be really specific. Elijah says, this is really informative. Thanks so much. Charlene's given me hands. Charlene, some of this was specifically for you. Kayleen says, we'll definitely need to reference this talk a lot. Yes, and remember, its other half is coming next week. I'm going to make sure to put them together on a playlist and remind people these two go together. It's going to be episode 115 and 116, and together I am calling them Transforming Towards Customer Centricity. So if there aren't any other questions, oh, Katie's here too. Great. Thanks for making this presentation. Sure. I've been writing a lot in the last week or so, and so I'm excited to premiere it. I was hoping y'all would shoot some holes in it so I could make it better. So if you have any comments or questions, we'll sign off soon, but please post them to the Slack channel because I would love to make this better. So if there's something you feel like I missed or I didn't explain well enough, and you can always join the Slack channel, totally free, Slack Workspace, deltacx.link/join Slack, all lowercase, all one word. And thanks to the people who tipped and subscribed during the show. Thank you so much. And of course, after this video is done, please come back and leave some comments so that YouTube will boost it in the algorithm. So with that, I'll play us out of here. I'll see you tomorrow for office hours, and I'll see you next Monday, July 7th. Is it really July? Oh, actually, I'm not doing it next Monday because it's Independence Day in America and everyone's going to be at the beach and barbecuing. So it's actually going to be Wednesday, July 7th will be the second half. Kayleen said, it's a lot of info. I got kind of fried toward the end. Yeah, you can see why I'm trying to boil it down to like 60 or 70 minutes, but that's this and the stuff I'm doing next Wednesday. So it's a lot, but I thought I would try to break it into two pieces. So next week's is going to be long too. Make some coffee. So thanks again, everybody. Be well. See you tomorrow for office hours, and then see you next week.
Delta CX, available for CX and UX consulting, projects, and training. Contact us for a free consultation.